I trust you have questions. And don't worry, I have answers. Surprisingly, quite a few answers, despite this, for a while, being considered kind of an urban legend up in Toronto, Canada. This, well, it is a ship. I understand not believing that, but it is a perplexing experimental design that was meant to revolutionize ocean travel. And it didn't do that at all. This odd cylinder cigar-shaped thing was the brainchild of one Frederick Knapp, a lawyer in Prescott, Ontario. He called it a roller boat, and it was a new way for people to, well, travel over the water. It didn't work. Well, it kinda worked, just not nearly as well as he claimed. And her fate would not be destruction, technically. Oh, yes, much like many, buried things that I discuss around here, the roller boat still technically exists and is buried somewhere near the former Toronto shoreline. So, yeah, that's a thing we're gonna talk about too. In order to understand the ridiculousness of Knapp's roller boat, one must discuss the roller ship, which was another unconventional and unsuccessful ship design, and was also experimented with towards the end of the 19th century. And obviously this does differ from Knapp's particular version, but the principle remains similar. Basically, you know how a lot of riverboats use water wheels? Steamboats use those a lot, and that's fine. It's one way to propel themselves through the water. Well, rollerboats took that to a distinct extreme and made so that not only were the wheels providing movement, but they also provided flotation. And the intention behind it was not unfounded. It's similar to the concept of a hydrofoil, by making it so that the ship would have as little hull contact with the water as possible. The amount of drag would be reduced, therefore making it so that the vessel would actually move a lot faster. The original invention was made by Ernest Bazin, and his thought was that the discs, which were hollow, would be attached to each side and provide buoyancy as well as propulsion. They'd be independently driven, with a separate screw lowered into the water from the hull to actually propel the boat. So it wasn't just the wheels in his case. The design did have a pretty traditional screw, but the discs did also assist with forward movement. Bazin spent 5 years testing models before he would manage to construct the full-size version, which was 280 tons, dubbed Ernest Bazin after himself, and she would be launched at St. Denis on August 19, 1896. She had 3 pairs of discs, which were each 10 meters in diameter and 3 meters thick. Each pair was independently driven by a 50-horsepower engine, and under normal conditions were about 1/3 submerged in the water. Bazin thought that she should be able to hit about 18 knots, perhaps even pushing 20, but some observers even suggested she could be even faster than that. The early model tests had actually gone pretty well. They compared very favorably with contemporary steamships as well as fast ocean liners, so this wasn't seen as necessarily a bad idea at the time. And the Ernest Bazin was meant to just be a test ship, to see if the principle worked at a full scale, and if it went well, they would likely construct an even larger version. But in practice, it was found that, unfortunately, this idea just didn't work very well. When she was preparing to cross the English Channel in early 1897, the design was completely unworkable. When the rollers rotated through the water, each one brought up so much water on each roll that it actually forced the wheels to brake, and this meant they moved a lot more slowly than expected, and with a much greater consumption of fuel. Bazin would actually die on January 21st, 1898, just a few weeks after he announced that he had actually overcome those problems and revealed plans for an ocean-going liner. He hadn't given up on the design at that point, but with his death, so died his ship. The overall concept did not die with him. It actually resurfaced in the 1930s, with proposed designs for a tricycle liner, appearing in Modern Mechanics in 1934, as well as a 4-wheeled boat in Popular Science in 1935, but those magazines did love their wacky designs, so I'm not really surprised they appeared in those. But the one we really want to talk about was the similar roller boat concept, designed independently in 1897 by Frederick Knapp, who again was a lawyer in Prescott, Ontario. Frederick Augustus Knapp was born in 1854 and educated at McGill. While he was a lawyer, as previously stated, he did have a passion for inventing, and he came up with his own concept for a roller boat. His design would be 110 feet long, 22 feet tall, and shaped like a cigar. And construction was partially financed by a daredevil named William Leonard Hunt, otherwise known as the Great Farini. And you're probably wondering, why is it shaped like a cylinder? Why does it look like that? Well, if you look close, you see those? Those are paddles. Indeed, the concept here is that the ship's outer hull is just the paddle, and it would rotate independently from the internals where the passengers and cargo would be. Which is an interesting idea, actually. The engine was also inside, and it was supported on roller bearings. And in theory, since the inside part of the ship didn't move, it would result in the ship being a lot more stable than a traditional ocean-going vessel. However, Knapp was, of course, inexperienced when it came to ship design, as well as basic principles. He had a passion for inventing, yes, but he was a lawyer, and he somewhat exaggerated, or perhaps thought way too highly of how good his concept would be. See, Knapp estimated his craft could potentially reach 200 miles per hour. Which... Okay, look, man, no. There's no way. Unless you got a jet engine in there somewhere. I don't think that's happening. He had his share of distractors after this particular comment, and that group of people began referring to the thing as Knapp's folly. As, for one thing, there's no way it would ever go that fast, but even if it was decent, the problem they found with her was that there really wasn't that much room for passengers or cargo when compared to a traditional vessel. It's true, perhaps you could make this a larger version and make more room, but still, the design kind of dictates there just not be that much room inside, and as such she could never be commercially viable. But Knapp still secured the necessary funds, and she was built at Polson Iron Works. When she was done, she, of course, looked distinctive. She really didn't look like any other ship of her era. While the cylinder shape isn't that dissimilar from modern submarines, this ship was not meant to be a submarine at all. She worked in a completely different way, as previously established. Because of the potential stability benefits, though, Knapp expected her to completely eliminate seasickness and cut transatlantic crossing times from 6 days to only 2. He had big dreams on top of this as well. See, it was widely known that Queen Victoria didn't really enjoy long sea voyages, as she did suffer from seasickness. Knapp adored the Queen, and he hoped that if he successfully transported her in his magical machine, it would even land him a knighthood. He really had lofty goals with this particular craft, is what I'm trying to say. She was launched, though, on September 8th, 1897, and she was tested on Lake Ontario a few weeks after that. And how did that go? Well, remember, Knapp said that she'd be able to hit 200 miles per hour. She hit 3 miles per hour. Amazing. Yeah, so she didn't really do very well with the initial tests, and this was in front of a crowd of thousands of people, so it was kind of embarrassing. But testing did go on with her. She actually did a bit better when she was tested in April of 1898, when wider paddles were installed on her. This, of course, got Knapp excited again, and he announced plans to build a version of her that was 800 feet long and 200 feet tall, with enough room to carry 30,000 American troops to Cuba to fight the Spanish-American War. That never happened. I mean, the war did, but none of our troops went in this in the cylinder ship. That didn't occur. 2 years later, a revised version of the ship attempted to reach Prescott, Ontario, where she was supposed to be adapted for use as a ferry between Prescott and Ogdensburg, New York. But as soon as she was in the water, the perplexing steering mechanism, which no source has given me solid details about, but I can only imagine was weird as heck given how this ship worked, began to malfunction, which is bad. By the time they reached Pickering, the coal supply was running low, so Knapp and Farini had to go ashore for more. They had further problems around Bowmanville, and that prompted them to drop anchor and abandon the journey for the night. While they were asleep, though, the anchor line snapped, and she would run aground on the rocky shore. To prevent her from running away again, they secured her to a nearby tree, and tugs were summoned from Kingston to help her complete her journey. By 1901, with the adaptations to make her a ferry finished, Knapp tried to make another test crossing of the St. Lawrence between Prescott and Ogdensburg, New York, again, but this time it was in a blinding snowstorm with a powerful headwind. Really, not the time to be doing this. But interestingly, she kind of pulled it off. I mean, she made it, technically, but she missed the entrance to the harbor and ended up stuck in the ice. Knapp and his crew would be rescued, and she'd be temporarily abandoned again. Knapp still stubbornly clung to the idea that he could make this design work, and he would continue tinkering with her over the following years. She was back at Paulson Ironworks by 1907, after she was given some more redesigns to try to improve her, but she again broke free of her moorings and slammed into the Turbinia, which was a large lake boat, causing $250 worth of damage, which doesn't sound like a lot, but this was 1907. That was a little over $8,000 in damage, which I guess still could have been worse, but still not great. Because Knapp had dried up all his financial support, he actually couldn't afford to even pay for the repairs, so he had no choice but to sell his invention for scrap. He received $300 in scrap value so he could pay off the damage, and at least pocket a little bit of the extra money. But, oddly, her hull was never claimed. Whoever paid the scrap value never came to get her, so she just kinda sat there. She was moved to various locations, just rusting away, around the ironworks until 1927, when the shoreline in that area was extended. The extension would result in her being buried. Knapp's rollerboat still lays buried exactly where she was, somewhere on Toronto's original shoreline. Archaeologists have dug into exactly where she might be, and examinations of the records place her under Lakeshore Boulevard, between Richardson and Lower Sherbourne Streets. So, great, another one of these historical artifacts underneath a road that people use. That's wonderful. I'm sure that'll be really easy to convince the city to let us just tear up the street, to take out an old cylinder boat that never even worked in the first place, and is probably rusted beyond recognition, but I still want to do it. The site straddles the road, a sidewalk, as well as a parking lot for FedEx vans, near the corner of Richardson Street. It's believed she could still be in one piece, but it's hard to know what condition she might be in at this point. And convincing the city to let you tear up a whole bunch of, stuff to get at her might be a hard sell. Plus, things like sewer lines and gas lines have been put in place since then. And while she wasn't exactly the largest ship in the world, she wasn't a tiny thing either. If she is in one piece, she would need a pretty big hole and a pretty big crane to lift her out of there. And then what condition would she be in? I don't know, but she belongs in a museum. She's such a unique piece of maritime history. No other ship that I know of was built quite like her. And yeah, she didn't work, but she was an interesting idea, and definitely worth being put in a museum. So I would absolutely support any movement that tries to get her out, but it does seem pretty unlikely that it'll ever happen. But actual archaeologists have looked into it, and that's at least more attention than a lot of the buried or sunken things I talk about on this channel get. But will Knapp's rollerboat ever see the light of day again? It's hard to say, but let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe, because apparently I'm supposed to keep asking you that, and I usually don't because I think it's annoying. But if you made it this far, I'd appreciate it. The algorithm likes that. And you can see more videos. And you make me smile. And if you don't, I'll cry. Is that what you want? And with that, a special thank you goes out to all my underwater train finders, Some Dude 267, Orange Glass, Benjamin Owens, Panzer Kitsude 131-232, Anzac A1, Arthur Roy, Brian, Jack Carson's Rural Videos, Lord Off 444, Mark Holding, Murder Drone Stall, A Person 723, Roy Hudson 2860, I Surfer 1405, Charles Kwiatkowski, Matt Weaver, Tom Redline, NS Predictions 8104, Hendrick Motorsports Fan 5, Wheeljack 8401, Rescues Greyhounds, The Baxter, Caleb Crosswhite, Ohio Drucker 1, Andrew Bowen, Josh Johnson, Hayden DeGrow, Caleb Brainwaters, Prez Drenton, Master of None, The Oklahoma Hot Rail, Liam Wright, Mr. Sleepy, Travis Delinsky, Jared Brussel, Dr. Racer 78, Joshua Long, Hannah Bird, Amtrak 2024 Productions, Tommy Rossini, and that guy with a beard. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.